hope you have some brain capacity left. I also want to start by thanking you for the opportunity to present here at this PEROSH conference. So my name is Johan Stenmark, and I'm from the Swedish Agency for Work Environment Expertise. And I'm going to talk about remote work and Okay, I think I also changed a bit in my head, the presentation. Yeah, sorry. So I'm going to talk about work environment and gender equality in the labor market. So the background for this project was that we got tasked by the government to look into, and the main question was basically how does an increased remote work after the COVID-19 pandemic affect gender equality in the labor market. So we decided to do two projects, a systematic literature review and a quantitative analysis. So to start with the literature review, Lena Grip and Ulrika Åklund at Karlstad University have produced this report for us under our project management. And the research questions were how do conditions for remote work differ between men and women, and how does remote work affect career and salary development, productivity, work-life balance, and then from a gender equality perspective. So I won't go into the details here in the methodology, but we searched in 3 databases, Scopus, Web of Science, and PsycInfo, and we had around 1,500 articles in the beginning, and when we had done all the exclusion, we ended up with 68 peer-reviewed articles, and it turned out that it was only a few of those studies that were from Sweden or even from the Nordic countries. And since we wanted to provide an answer for the government in the Swedish context, we decided to add some grey literature, so we got more of a bulk of reports for the Swedish and Nordic context. And one challenge was, of course, that they want us to look into, well, how is it now after the pandemic? So not pandemic-specific effects, like remote work, and how does this new sort of the way that we're working affect gender equality. But of course there was not enough studies that was done just after the pandemic. So we had to look at the time period where also the pandemic were in effect. But we had that in mind to really try to sort out studies that were really focusing on pandemic-specific effects. So we were really after this working from home and this connection, what does that do? But of course, there is some problems with that. So I'm jumping to the findings. And so for career and salary, we see that remote work may expand the labor market's access for women because they tend to be more place-bound because of this extra responsibility that most women take compared to men for taking care of children and household and also caretaking for others. So that makes you more place-bound. But if you can work from remotely, you can expand your geographical job market circles. You can take maybe other types of jobs that are better paid, or that you're in line with your qualifications. So that we see a positive effect that remote work is enabling. But then there are some mixed evidence on wage gap. So there are studies that indicate that you get, with this working remotely, you can work more hours, which I'm going to look into then later in this quantitative analysis. So I'm going to return to the working hours. So that may reduce some income differences, but then on the other hand, it seems like women are suffering more than men if they work remotely from promotion and wage premiums, because you're not at the working place in the same amount. So that can limit career progression, and this seems to be especially true for women and mothers. It's also true for men to some extent in the studies, but it's more true for women. So they're suffering more from that. So, so in norms and expectation, which of course they go into another here and can explain each other. But gender norms, they shape how remote work is perceived and sometimes also organized. So there's a perception that men are more productive when working remotely, but there's a perception that mothers are assumed to be less efficient because they have this responsibility of all the unpaid work. So it's these stereotypes that influence opportunities for advancement and pay. But here it is, if you look at some studies where remote work is highly integrated, and it's almost everyone in the organization is working remotely, and you can sort of structure your organization, so this is what you do, then you don't see this negative effect. Yes, so in work-life balance, so it's also paradoxical because it's also a benefit to be able to do this mix of unpaid and paid work. It becomes easier. You don't need to commute, so you can easily puzzle everything together. But what we see in the studies that women more often than men, to a higher degree, they multitask more. So they balance this during the day. They do unpaid work and paid work more, and then they extend the workday. So they work more. It seems like so they get less recovery time than men that don't use this extra time, so to say, that you get from not commuting in the same sense. So that is a risk that we see. So to conclude, so it can promote some gender equality by mostly this expanded labor market participation, but it's a huge risk that you simply just reinforce the old gender norms, and then working remotely is just interacting with these old structures and are simply just enhancing them. So therefore, this example with this organization where it's like really integrated, so quality and workplace design and all that stuff, it's really crucial to address the main structural problems. If you just add the working remotely, you will most likely just have old norms and structure just reinforced. So now I'm going to jump to the quantitative analysis, and that was done by Karin Haldén at the Swedish Institute for Social Research at Stockholm University. And here we looked really specifically, we wanted to investigate if the remote work have the possibility to reduce the gender gap in worked hours per week between men and women. So we compared men and women's actual working hours, and then we distinguished between people who work remotely and who did not work remote. And to begin with, I'm just going to show this gap here between men and women. So you have the working hours per week there on the y-axis. And never mind the 2020, the question is not asked in the same way, so we're not using that data point. So this is just to show the gap actually between men and women. So we used the labor force survey, and we used data from 2016 to 2024. So we made first a cross-sectional analysis, and then we made analysis using panel data. And we were controlling for gender, age, education, family occupation, and marital status, number of children, children under the age of 7, seniority in the occupation, sector, industry, managerial responsibility, workplace size, and type of employment. So we had 2 different models, which you will see here. So here we have the difference in working hours. So if you work remotely, this is the amount of extra hours you work per week, which you see on the x-axis, compared to if you're not working remotely. And this is for women. And it's also these 2 different models. So it's the second model that are controlling for all these variables that I just mentioned. So then you can see that it's quite a lot of the effect that is sort of disappearing. But it's for 2024, you can see that it's roughly 1 hour and 20 minutes extra per week. Still. So there's a positive correlation between remote work and actual weekly working hours, and the effects are stronger for women than for men. However, when we looked at the panel data, we can see. So let me start by explaining this graph a bit. So here instead we have the extra working hours that men and women who are working remotely are working per week. But it's in 0.1, 0.2, so it's 0.2 extra hours. So when you look at this longitudinal data, you see that even more of this correlation is sort of disappearing, and it's basically the explanation is that it's a lot of selection effects going into this. So here are also the two models. So if we concentrate on model 2 that are also controlling for all these variables, you can see that it's shrinking down to, for men, they're working roughly 11 minutes longer per week if you work remotely compared to not working remotely, and for women it is 14 minutes. However, we also looked at parents, and there it's not any statistical significant difference for men, but it is for women, and there it's also jumping up to 25 minutes. So there we have a stronger effect. So it seems like remote work, it is increasing the working hours for both women and men. But when we use the panel data, we see that the connection is much weaker. But it's still statistically significant changes. When it comes to parents, it's only for mothers, but it's a slightly bigger effect. But as we can see, most of this correlation that we see in the beginning seems to be selection effect. And yes, that was it. Thank you. And you can download both of these reports on our website, SAWEE.se. And I also want to mention that we just started another project that are going to look into remote work and the connection to health. And that report will also have a gender equality perspective. So, yeah, thank you.